Now, I'm saying to you, David, what we've seen recently, what with pride, pronouns, climate change, gender politics, racism, sexism, Stonewall in banks, we can all agree maybe it's time to kick that stuff out of bank. But is the answer some sort of private equity, not just a state attempt like this, but a private attempt, a conservative bank free of politics? Would that be popular?
Yeah, well, there's lots of things to say about that. I mean, I went to the bank this morning and the first thing I saw on the machine was the Pride Progress flag. I'd call it something else, but I really don't want to see that when I go in to do my banking. And I think people are crying out to get rid of this stuff. People just hate this wokery when they go into a bank. They want the banks to be about looking after your money, which is what they were 10 years ago or so. So the thing is, it's a wider question. We have cultural Marxism embedded in all of our institutions now. This is the long march through the institutions that has been happening since the 60s. It started with educational institutions, then political and media institutions. Now it's got to the banking institutions. So they are fully on board with the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda. But the thing is, it's not inclusive to people like Nigel Farage and thousands of other people who don't have the right view. So I would support a bank that says we are not going to follow the equality, diversity, inclusion and environmental social governance, ESG, programme that they've got going on. We need something like that.
Aaron, the second time we've mentioned Karl Marx in a show, probably the first time ever on GB News, a sharp intake of breath when David said we have cultural Marxism in banks. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't agree with that. I just think this is liberalism. This is liberalism as it's always been. And let's mention Marx a third time. He said that capitalism, what it does is it turns all that is holy profane, all that is solid melts into air, which is to say that it really disintegrates all of the social mores that people take for granted. It's a reason why I've never understood why social conservatives don't actually take his thinking a little bit more seriously. I would say this is liberalism. Quickly, your audience probably haven't heard this. Last night, Rachel Reeves was interviewed by Channel 4. It never went out. She described what's happening to the former now CEO of NatWest as bullying.
Yeah.
Why? Because she was the first female CEO of NatWest. So let's look at this logically. If a woman is the CEO of a bank, you can be debanked. If a man is the CEO, you can't be. This is identity politics liberalism gone completely insane.
Yeah.
I don't think it's got anything to do with Marxism.
Yeah, fair enough. And why do you think that this kind of gender identity politic, wokeism, for want of a better word, has impregnated not just banks, but all of our public bodies? Where did it come from, and can it ever be kicked out? Or is it now here to stay?
Well, I do disagree with you, Aaron. I mean, some of the things I do, but this is cultural Marxism. And this is one of the ideologies of cultural Marxism. And what that basically says is that society is institutionally sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, and then it needs to be deliberately changed to overcome those fabricated injustices that people have said that exist, which don't exist. So you have there, people say that society is inherently misogynistic.
Where's that in Marx, though? I understand
it's not. It's cultural Marxism, which comes later on from the Frankfurt School and from Gramsci in the 1920s. So
what call it Marxism? If it's got nothing to do with
it's cultural Marxism. So it's Marxism is economic, of course. It looks at the working class are the victims and the oppressors are the capitalists. That's Marxism.
Yeah.
Cultural Marxism then sets up new oppressive victim narratives based on those new groups of people that I've just mentioned. So they say society is inherently transphobic, for example. So we need to change it and change the laws in order to recognise gender fluidity, for example.
I want to put it to you, Aaron. When did it become fashionable for people on the political left to take sides with banks like Coutts? You have to have £1 million to start an account. And why won't the Labour Party, Keir Starmer has been absolutely silent on this, why won't Starmer actually, I think, do the right thing, just say, look, I completely disagree with Nigel Farage, but what's happened to him is unacceptable? Because if they come for Farage first, it could be someone from the left next.
Well, someone probably wouldn't mind because he's not really from the left. He would say, I'm from the centre. If the political extremes get punished by this, so be it. To be fair to him, he did say that this morning. It took a long time, but he did say that. And you're very right to point this out, Martin. Look, in 2008, the public, the great British public, the taxpayer, bailed out the banks of the country. The idea that those very same institutions can foreclose the possibility of a British subject to be able to access business banking in the case of Nigel Farage is absolutely extraordinary. And I personally would have thought, as somebody from the left, that it's 101 in terms of our politics that you don't let that happen. And hopefully this is a signal moment to say that, look, we're progressives, we're on the left, we're on the side of the little person, not multinational banks.
Well, they have so far, have they? David, I want to put it to you. Does this expose a further kind of Remainer chumocracy that we see in big business? And of course, leaked straight to the BBC, who swallow it like a kipper, regurgitated the story, proven to be an incorrect version of events, but they didn't use BBC Verify, they didn't fact check it. What does that say to us about the propensity to believe this stuff because they want it to be true?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the mix, isn't it? I mean, the people who are in the establishment here, they hate anyone who wanted to leave the European Union, who was for Brexit, the same as they are against anyone who doesn't agree with the climate narrative or the trans narrative. It's all mixed in together as these kind of intersectional narratives and things that they want to push on society. So, you know, I think most of the people in the upper echelons of the establishment want actually really at heart want to go back into the EU. So they would in any way possible punish someone who has that viewpoint and actually got us out of the EU. I mean, that's definitely part of the mix.
And do you think, Aaron, that's a fair assumption to make now that banks, which ought by any measurable metric be politically neutral, are actually not only political in terms of the gender, the climate, but they're hard political, pro-Remain, anti-Brexit? That's what this is about.
Well, I would siphon off the point about climate because they think that's an opportunity to make money, I presume. That's the narrative anyway, although debanking people is going to lose you money as a business. So I would park that just for a moment for the point of clarity. Maybe we can disagree, but I think it's a little bit different. I think as a society, everybody wants to be a superhero now in our culture, don't they? They want to feel like their job is changing the world. And actually, providing just safe, decent retail banking services where there's not a massive margin between the base rate and the savings rates that's being offered to everyday Brits out there. Heaven forbid that happens. That in itself is a very noble endeavour. But instead, as a culture, we've tied all kinds of other things to it. Well, my job has meaning because I do X, Y, Z. I'm on the side of the goodies. I'm stopping the baddies. Life isn't a Marvel movie. Offer good banking products to everyday people, regardless of what they think. Let's go back to a sensible banking system.
Here to that. And part of the issue, of course, is that politics has become so polarised. And I believe, Aaron, you had an unfortunate incident happen to you recently. What happened? We care to share it with us.
Yeah, I'll happily share it. I tweeted about this and it got a lot of attention. I was walking out of my house. Somebody recognised me as they walked past. They said my name. They clobbered me. Fortunately, I could deal with the gentleman. He was pacified. A bypasser helped me. The police came along, it was processed, but I just find it extraordinary. You know, Martin, if it's 11 o'clock on a Friday night, somebody's had a few beers, you understand it. Obviously, I'm not, it's never acceptable, but you understand it. It happens all over the country. But at midday, on a Tuesday afternoon, to be on your own street and punched in the face by a complete stranger, I cannot get my head around that. And I sadly think that's the direction of too much political debate in this country.
I would just like to say that I condemn anything of that nature. You've always been a fantastic sort of guest, a great lad, and we disagree on many things, we agree on many things. But if you get into the stage where you're having a pop at people, you're having a physical dig, that is a step too far. It's not a good thing. And don't be the exact thing that we're accused of ourselves. Let's just not do that sort of stuff. So I hope you're all right.
Jen, cheers.
All right, cheers. Anything to add before we move on?
I would agree with Aaron, actually. The banks should be just about banking, and they should provide everybody, the ordinary people, with banking facilities. I mean, there should be a law, like you have in some countries in Europe, that says banks must provide a basic personal account because they have immense privileges. You know, banks, basically, they have a license to print money out of nothing and lend it out, with fractional reserve banking. That's a whole other issue. But they have those immense privileges. The other side of the coin should be you must provide basic banking services to everybody.